Hi everyone, it's Leonore. Welcome to my channel. Um, I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for those who have been listening to me, and I also welcome the new viewers. Um, I'm not gonna lie, today my content is going to be straight out of the X-Files show. For those who ever watched the X-Files, um, and it's because of something I just recently learned about the military space force, which is basically the sixth branch. The sixth branch is something that President Trump has approved and signed for. And you know, people are making fun of him and laughing and like, oh my God, he signed $740 billion of our money to a space command. And, you know, it has a lot, honestly, to do with extraterrestrial life and UFOs and stuff like that. So when I mean X-Files, I truly mean my content is going to sound like an X-Files type of show. All right? If you're not into that, tune off. But listen, I'm just talking about our president and why he has recently implemented this, and recently meaning he signed this back in December of 2019. Okay. And what is the importance of this military branch, this sixth branch, they call it? Well, according to him, quote unquote, space is the new world's new war fighting domain. Notice how he put space and war in the same sentence. I'll repeat it. Space is the world's new war fighting domain. It is a grave threat to the national security. It's supposed to deter aggression and control the ultimate high ground. Now, the ultimate high ground is obviously space, right? I'm going to assume that he means space because that's the ultimate high ground, right? And plus, it is a space force. So yeah, he's very passionate about this. He had just recently appointed Raymond is his name. I can't remember his first name, but one of the Joint Chiefs, Raymond, General Raymond, to be part of this Space Force. Okay, it is a military space force. And just a little history about our Space Force, or our U.S. Command, Space Command, I should say, or Air Force, basically Air Force and U.S. Space Command. This goes back like way in the 1940s, 1947, if I'm not mistaken. The U.S. formed its first branch, and that was the Air Force. Okay. And by the 1960s, the Air Force had controlled the U.S. Space Command. And the U.S. Space Command, you know, these are satellites in space that basically tells, for the most part, airplanes where to go, where not to go, when to fly, when not to fly. These satellites are put in space for a reason. Other countries have them too. So once an airplane leaves our country, it goes into another space command, another country's space command. And they tell them pretty much where to go, when to fly, when not to fly, blah, blah, blah. Okay? The Soviet Union, in case you're wondering, was the first to establish and launch the first satellite in space. Yeah. The Soviet Union meaning Russia. They call it Russia now. All right, so why should you care about this? Why should you really care about this and watch this video? To hear my voice? Maybe, but no. Because people still think that, there is no such thing as extraterrestrial life or aliens, UFOs, all those sightings and abduction, are straight out of the movies. And no, they're not. Your president, and I'll repeat, your president, my president too, because I do live in the United States, but just signed a $740 billion space command, and he calls it the Military Space Force. And this is for a reason. There is a war that he needs to fight in the space domain. So what does that mean? He's fighting a war that doesn't exist? I don't think so. This is something that the armed forces and Pentagon and government officials all know about, and has been classified and has been a myth, right? A hypothesis, because it could never be proven. But to tell you the truth, honestly, like for the last few years, I don't listen to the news too much, but I know that in the last few years, not that aliens, have been, a part of the news. Actually, if I had to say, zombies have probably been more popular than alien movies, right? Zombie movies have been more popular now, but there was a time where people were only talking about UFOs and aliens and abductions and stuff like that, and Bermuda Triangle to be, one of the mysteries on Earth, the magnetic force that goes around the grid of the Earth, that may attract aliens, kind of like a GPS, if I had to say it in lame terms. This has been going around for even before I was born. I mean, this is something that scientists and government officials have been known about, but it has been classified. But in the last few years, it has not. There are way too many abductions, there are way too many UFO sightings, and there are way too many evidence. Okay? Yes, I do channel messages. And if you watch my show, you see and you hear sometimes that I say I channel messages sometimes. I do, I was given that ability. But this is not a channel message, folks. This is something that you could Google easily. You just talk to Siri or Alexa. They'll put you down to the game. All right. But moving on. We have even astrophysicists. There's a very well-known astrophysicist, Neil DeGrasse, Tyson. That's his full name, Neil DeGrasse Tyson. And he does confirm that, the Sixth Branch Space Force has to do with activities that relate to the conduct of war and human extinction. That's some crazy shit. And so when the word was going around that President Trump was going to sign, the $740 billion approval to basically open up a military space force, I mean, a lot of astrophysicists was on board and, had their own opinions. Some of them, may deny it. Some of them are confirming it. And when I mean deny and confirm, what I mean is the extraterrestrial hypothesis, quote unquote, that has been going around for thousands of years. Okay? Thousands. 6,000 to be exact. those places that you see or that you hear about on television, in Peru, Mexico, Europe, these places that have certain type of energy that does not coincide with the Earth's energy, or these special, you know, buildings. When I mean buildings, I mean like artifacts of these stones. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, things that happened even, probably just 2 years ago, where this whole bunch of people. I mean, this was called a mass abduction. They called it a mass abduction of people that were abducted by aliens. They were abducted. They came back to Earth, thank goodness, because sometimes they don't. And they gave a detailed account of what they saw. And it was scary. It's traumatic when these people get abducted. Lupe Fiasco is one of them. He has a traumatic story about alien abduction, and about the scar that proves that he was, abducted. This scar that he said came out of nowhere. He was like, I didn't have this scar until that traumatic night. John Lennon and his girlfriend at the time witnessed this spacecraft, this UFO, very close to them, outside the window, to the point where they called the police. They were afraid. Okay, and the list goes on, not just celebrities. It's just, I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Even I had my encounter, and I know I talk about the age of Aquarius, and I know in my last video I recently just spoke about extraterrestrial, my predictions for 2020, and how the awakened, or those who want to be awakened, are going to see more extraterrestrial activity. They're going to be more prominent, more prevalent, and I feel them. I happen to be a clair sentient, where I feel energy, and sometimes I could see them, not with my eyes, because our eyes are not that advanced as technology is, and that's why sometimes people could catch a ghost or hear a ghost or supernatural activity through technology, or electronics, because our ears and eyes are not meant for that. But I could feel, and when I feel, sometimes I could see through my third eye. And so I could give description, a detailed description of what I've seen. Before I embraced my clairaudient and clairsentient and my tarot cards, when I was a lot younger. I was in college, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I party hard, just like I work just as hard. And I was drinking. I might have taken a couple of puffs of marijuana, whatever, And so I don't really like to tell the story because I was under the influence, but a very strange thing happened to me that night. And I don't want to call it an abduction, but it damn sure sounds like it. And it's something I really never really spoken to about it, because I couldn't understand it myself. The last thing I thought was alien abduction. But if I could describe the details to you, I mean, I saw these lights, and I didn't know where the fuck I was. For a minute, I almost thought I was in an ambulance and something had happened to me, but I couldn't move my body. All I could really sense is chattering. I don't know what type of chattering it was. I remember these lights, these blue, red, yellow, green lights. And that's what made me think I was maybe inside a police car or an ambulance, because these are the type of lights that I remember just seeing. But I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. And this is just a couple of puffs of fucking marijuana and beer. Really? If you know me, you would be like, yeah, it takes a lot more than that for her to really get into a stupor. But yeah, I couldn't explain it. At the time I was with someone. I was with my then boyfriend, and he was so worried about me. He lost me. Imagine being with someone and you're like this, I lost that person. I don't know. They were with me 1 minute and the next minute they weren't there. He couldn't even explain it. He looked for me, I would say, for half the night. This man was worried. And do you know where I ended up? I ended up in a hospital. And I woke up like as if I was sleeping. I don't know, but I wasn't. And I remember the nurse coming up to me and she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, how did I end up here? And she's like, well, a car just dropped you off and here you are, we're just making sure, we found, traces of cannabis and alcohol in your system, and it was crazy. And I was just like, what do you mean a car just dropped me off? They were like, well, a man found you on the streets and they dropped you off in the hospital. And I'm like, what? Because in my head, I'm like, that's not what I visioned. I visioned them. I was a specimen. I know that there's some fucking chip or two in my body. I know that I'm being watched. Me being paranoid is the least of my problems because people always say that I'm a paranoid schizophrenic person, and I'm like, you know what? There's a reason. And thank God for people who really do believe me and know that I don't know. Thank God for people who have gone through the same thing that I've gone through, or pretty much believe me, because I don't know. I would brush it off like it didn't happen, or I would go to a psych ward. I don't know. Trust me, I've done both. I've been there and done that with both, but whatever. That's my story. I'm gonna stick to it. Goodbye. But yeah, when I heard about the sixth branch and how serious this was, they feel like this is a threat to our national security. Why would they think that? I would think that extraterrestrial, hopefully, are like, the E.T. movie with Drew Barrymore, friendly. I know the one that I encountered were friendly, and when I think I got abducted, I'm gonna say I think, I don't know. Let's not forget I was under the influence, but I know what I saw and I know what I experienced. And then to show up hours later, like, I basically walked out of the hospital. The doctors were like, "You're fine. Just, we're just trying to see, when you when you wake up, so you could get out of here because we need this bed." But, I found my then boyfriend at the time, and he was, this man was so concerned. And I told him what happened. And I couldn't explain to him in the way I'm explaining it to you now. But all I know is that he was so ecstatic he found me. He even went to my family and was like, I lost her. I don't know where she is. And my family was like, oh, don't worry, she'll show up. Like, they didn't even take it serious. They were like, don't worry, she'll show up. I'm sure she's somewhere. But, hours did go by, and it felt like a fucking 5 minutes. And hours went by. So when I finally woke up and I saw that it was 6 o'clock in the morning, I was just like, what? Anyway, moving on from my story. What is the pandemonium about? Because I really don't sense any pandemonium. There is no pandemonium. But they will be. Yeah, trust me on that. The pandemonium, if, with all due respect, they see these extraterrestrial as a threat because they do evade and they do control the technology that scientists and military intel has worked hard on detecting any type of security threat, like I said. And so one of these military intel and technology are nuclear weapons. The ICBM, which is short for Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles. They're nuclear weapons. Yes, they are nuclear weapons. And so, France, China, Russia, US, UK, these countries all have nuclear weapons, either chemical, biological, both. It's not a secret. And so, has allies or maybe treaties that were signed that I don't know. They all have agreed that, nuclear weapons is not something that maybe they'll use against each other. I don't know. Fuck do I know? But they do carry them. They do have them. And so, by the way, fun fact, I'm not digressing. Fun fact, Russia by far has the most nuclear weapons, more than the U.S. I think, as a matter of fact, China and U.S. are equal to the amount of nuclear weapons, but Russia by far. I'm not surprised, but I could see why Trump is, Vladimir Putin's best friend, They make fun of Trump, in cahoots with, Russian intel and the president of Russia or prime minister. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but, I would be an ally to someone who has way much more nuclear weapons than I do if I was president, especially if one of them is called Satan. I swear, like one of the most deadliest missiles they have one of the most deadliest. I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. They have the deadliest nuclear weapon in the world. And they called it Satan. So that just tells you a lot about Russia and the relationship between the U.S. and Russia. Yeah, we're not trying to go there with them. And we're not trying to, I don't think, honestly, if, you know, if I had to feel it in my heart, I don't think that any country wants to go to war with each other. I mean, I know when Japan, or Korea, sorry, I should say Korea, that president in Korea, South Korea, I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. I'm pretty sure it's South Korea, not North. And he was testing his nuclear weapons or missiles, not nuclear weapons, I'm sorry, but missiles, you know, and people were getting scared, like who the hell tests, you know, missiles? But the United States, you know, they test missile in Puerto Rico. You know, people, politicians, that's what they do. They test missiles. They need to know if it's working, you know. And the sad part about it is that, you know, it does have a lot of radiation, and people do advocate for the fact that, you know, missiles should not be thrown, you know, just for pleasure or testing. But, you know, it does cause some type of harm to the air and to people around the area. And so nobody really wants to throw missiles and nuclear weapons at each other. However, the mass of people that got abducted and came back did come back with some fucking intel. And they said that these extraterrestrial have maps or calendars. They weren't sure what it was, but they did come back with the fact that we only have 100 years left. Humankind only has 100 years left. That they don't know what that meant. What does that mean? What do you mean 100 years left? They couldn't figure it out. They were like, 100 years left? What do you mean 100 years left? And they were like, we don't know. That's what we saw, or at least one or two of them saw. And so they came back with this intel, you know, you know, and I say intel because it is intel, you know. This is the Pentagon, you know, not the local police. Shout out to the local police, but you know, these people are being interviewed by, you know, the top of the top. And so for them to go by their information, you know, they didn't take it as a fucking hoax. For the president to sign a $740 billion approval to build this sixth branch, this military space command, this military space force, whatever you want to call it, that's some shit about to happen. Or it's happening right now. And I know in my video in the Age of Aquarius, I said that you shouldn't be very scared of them, because I have encountered one very recently in my own apartment. And I saw it through my third eye, you know, not visually, but through my third eye, if anybody knows what that means. And I felt it, and it wasn't trying to cause any harm whatsoever. And you know, I know that the little ones are a problem. The little slimy ones are a problem, but not the big ones. That I could tell you. I don't remember what I said, but I know that I was making predictions, and that was one of them. And so it's not a secret is what I'm trying to say. It's not a hoax. It's not classified information. It's not the X-Files, you know, show, cult classic show. You know, it's fucking real life. It's what's happening. And so I'm just letting you guys know what's going on in the White House. All right. I guess I talked enough. Love you. Bye.